next thing is striking your head is not required. There's not a prerequisite to having a traumatic brain injury. Now, obviously, if you do have a loss of consciousness and you do have striking of your head, you have a better case, an easier case to prove. But what do you do when you don't have this, this striking of the head? Well, acceleration and deceleration of the head and the neck is enough. You saw Dr. Zajewski show his examination during his speech this morning. He talked about how the brain moves inside the skull. Neuropsychologists will definitely give you the admission that striking the head is not required. I think the example that Dr. Zajewski had with the gel, that was a 7-mile-an-hour collision. And you saw how the brain kind of waved, and the brain-like material. I mean, it was gel, but it was like the brain consistency. So most doctors will admit that after a severe neck injury from a whiplash type acceleration deceleration from that force, you can have a mild closed head injury because the brain is moving rapidly inside the skull and then makes contact with the cranium. It can separate from the inside of the skull on the backside. Then you have bleeding. If it doesn't, it can at least make contact, and there can be microscopic damage that you can't see on an MRI or on a CT scan. So questions that you might want to ask are, doctor, you'd agree with me a person can suffer a traumatic brain injury without actually striking their head. In fact, neuropsychologists, doctor, they make that diagnosis all the time, don't they? And you would agree with me that the skull and the brain do not move in perfect harmony or synchronization when there's an acceleration, deceleration of the head. Yeah, I'll agree with you on that. In fact, the brain can bounce around inside the skull, can it, doctor, when there's an acceleration, deceleration injury? Yeah, it can. And that can lead to a frontal lobe injury of the brain or injury to other parts of the brain. And you've made diagnoses of this type of event when people didn't strike their head where they had a permanent brain injury, didn't you? Haven't you? Yeah. So they will almost universally answer yes to all those questions.